You're listening to The Lara Coach Show on SiriusXM Urban View.
Hey, welcome back to The Lara Coach Show here on SiriusXM Urban View. We're talking powers and become that. Thank you to Congresswoman Gwen Moore for joining the show and telling us about her background and, of course, what we are working on, what she's working on, the royal we, working on in Congress right now to try to make sure that the dreams that so many of us have could actually be realized even in the midst of a pandemic. And of course, it takes people who represent your views, represent all people to be able to go to Capitol Hill and to be able to fight for the things that resonate with us all, the ties that bind, to help us make ends meet, to figure out what is in fact going on in this country and how it can be even better, how it can propel itself past this pandemic. My God, what can we do? Well, of course, to get there, to have that republic, if you can keep it, we're going to have voting. We're going to have people out there making sure they vote early, that their votes are counted, and understanding the value of a representative democracy. And of course, as the Postmaster General is testifying right now on Capitol Hill in front of the House, he is saying, look, I didn't direct equipment removal. I didn't direct anyone to cut any hours. But no, I'm not going to put any of that stuff back. But no, I'm not. I don't know why there's all this hoopla about this maybe being a partisan issue. I mean, oh, is it an election year? Did you want to have a more efficient postal service when you might need to have mail-in balloting? Oh, is that what's going on here right now? Oh, my mistake. I guess it's really just much ado about nothing, though, for anyone who thought that it was anything more than a coincidence. Interesting. Well, look, we need to know what we need to do to ensure that our vote actually counts, that we know it matters, but how do we actually get it to count, and how do we ensure that we can guard against suppressive tactics? I'm joined now by election law expert and attorney Richard C. Bell. He's been on the front lines of voting rights, protecting voters at the polls and in the courtroom for more than 15 years. He has a new book out called Voting, The Ultimate Act of Resistance, chronicles his voter protection work, and also reveals the real stories about what happens when votes are denied and how to get ballots restored, among other aspects as well. Welcome back to the show, Richard C. Bell. How are you?
Oh, so well, Laura. Thank you so much for inviting me back.
I'm glad you're here. You have a new book out called Voting, The Ultimate Act of Resistance. Tell me about this book and why it was so important for you to write it right now.
Oh, absolutely, Laura. So this basically chronicles my battle against voter suppression. I've done it at the polls. I've done it in the courtroom for almost 2 decades. And through my experiences, I've had the police come for me in Philadelphia and a judge come at me in New Jersey and everyone come after me in Florida. So I want people to know what happens when voter suppression is out there at the polls in various states. And it is a hand-to-hand battle, and people need to understand why voting is so important.
So what are some of the things that are threatening the election integrity right now in America? We know the Postal Service is has these hurdles, shall we say, but what's really happening right now?
Okay, the biggest threat to election integrity is the man in the White House who is trying to create through false claims that there's a crisis in confidence in the integrity of our voting system, because he's doing it either if he loses the election, that's what he's going to claim was the reason, or he's trying to suppress turnout now. So we have to understand that every claim he's making is false, because there are studies and studies and more studies than unanimous. There's no voter fraud out there of any consequence. And I want to just tell your audience unequivocally, I, as someone who's out there, I have complete faith in our election system, but it requires the voters to participate and do the things they need to do.
So what do they need to do? I mean, right over the weekend, there was analysis done where they found more than 500,000 ballots that had been rejected in the primaries, absentee ballots. What do people need to know, and how can they make sure that when they are prepared and casting their vote, that it'll actually be counted?
Sure. Well, first of all, that study shows that most of the time when the ballot was not counted, it was because either it was late or it had a missing signature, or it didn't have 2 signatures. So we all have to be extremely careful about how we fill them out and triple check them. But most of all, let's start with everyone in your audience should go to this nonpartisan site called vote.org, because it is going to tell them their state's deadlines for registration, mail-in ballots, early voting, all the things they have to know. So that's number one, because they need to have a plan. The next three things, early, early, early. Whether you're going to vote by mail, you're going to vote in early voting, you've got to do it early, because when you do things early, if there is a problem, it can be rectified on time. And that means that everyone has to have a plan, and they have to start thinking about it now and executing on it right now.
So is there a way, I mean, if someone's vote is denied, is there a way to get them restored in some way, or the ballot restored somehow?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, if you're doing a vote by mail, in many states, the state will notify you if there is a problem, like a missing signature or a signature match problem or something of that nature, and give you a number of days to fix it. It varies state by state. That's why you go to that vote.org. But yes, if you do it early, you'll have plenty of time to fix it. In person, that's what I do. At the polls or in the courtroom, people are denied the right to vote. Sometimes I had a big problem in Florida where this poll worker kept sending people out and saying that they were at the wrong polling place and they couldn't change their address by affidavit. Totally wrong law. It was, unfortunately, every time I do voting suppression work, it's 95% black and brown people that are being suppressed. And we had to go all the way up to the supervisor of elections in South Florida to get it rectified multiple times during the day. So when you're at the polls, there's many times people like me, poll watchers outside the polls, and if you have a problem, you tell them, and we can advise you what to do to make sure you can cast your vote that day.
So how do they find you? I mean, people like yourself. So I remember being, when I was monitoring elections for the DOJ, there are poll watchers outside, but there's also people outside who are handing over, here's how to vote the Republican ticket. Here's how to vote the Democratic. Is there a way to distinguish and identify those who are poll monitors and could help versus other people?
Laura, if you ever saw me at a polling place, you'd see me with my 12-inch by 12-inch poster on my front of my suit. You'd hear me yelling, if you need help, please ask me now. If you go in and you were denied your right to vote, please come back and ask me. And I do that in a loud voice for 12 to 14 hours, however long the poll is open.
So when this happens in real time, say someone's vote is denied in real time and they have not followed the very sage advice of taking care of it early. Everyone, hear us, do it early. Go to vote.org. Are you registered? Have you been removed from the voter rolls? Is there something wrong with your address or your ID or something you can rectify right now? Make the time to have a plan and be able to correct any issues now. You're 70 days out from the presidential election. Now is absolutely the time to do so. But say somebody has not followed your sage wisdom, Richard C. Bell, and they have not read your new book, Voting the Ultimate Act of Resistance. Tell me, that same day, what is the process like? If you're going to someone at the polls and saying, I was denied right to vote, how long will it take? How can people not get discouraged? They go to the back of the line again to wait again? What do they actually do? And how quickly and responsive are the election supervisors to your claims that the person has been unfairly denied?
Okay, so there's basically two ways. If you've been denied and somebody outside like me, a poll watcher, can help you, we'll advise you if you were given wrong information inside. And I sent people right back in with the right information. That's why they called the police on me in Philadelphia. They didn't like that too much, but I prevailed. So you've got to be persistent. You've got to go in there. You've got to know what your rights are. There are other states, I've done this in New Jersey, where if you're denied the right to vote at a polling place, they will give you a slip. You bring it to the county courthouse, and you get a hearing before a judge. I have done dozens and dozens and dozens. That day, oh, no, you have to vote that day. The hearing is that day. They have emergency judges. Everyone is entitled to a hearing. I've represented those workers. I actually have a chapter called A Brave Woman Teaches a Judge a Lesson in the Law in 2008, because we argue what the law is before a judge and say, I don't care what the poll worker said. Judge, you have to let this woman vote today. She's right. They're wrong.
Wow. And so we look at all this, of course, and thinking to ourselves, well, will all this be sort of helped these problems, the suppression, the et cetera, if you have mail-in ballots. Of course, the president is saying, no, mail-in ballots, you don't want to look at those. You don't want absentee, fine, but mailed ballots, totally for some reason different. You've experienced work in Florida and what it's like there as well, an area where they do a lot of mail-in ballots. I mean, is mail-in voting the way of the future, and should it be?
Yes. So first of all, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Mail-in and absentee is the same thing. He gets it mixed up with universal vote by mail, which is only in 9 states where they send you the ballot and you send it back. So number one, as usual, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Number two, the mail-in ballots, you're in a pandemic. There's a lot of people rightfully who are afraid to go to a polling place or wait in line. We all understand that. So that's why we have no excuse mail-in voting in 44 states and D.C. this time. And the way to go here is if you're concerned about the Postal Service. Now, it shouldn't be a problem if you do it early, because you're giving yourself plenty of time. As soon as you get it, send it back. But you have to remember, number one, in most states you have to apply for it. So get on that website, vote.org, and find out how to apply to get the ballot. And number two, you can drop it in most states either in a drop box, and you'll find out where from that website where it's designated, or number two, you can literally bring it back to your Board of Elections if you get transportation and just hand deliver it. Because it's personally what I do, because I usually am out of town on Election Day. I bring to the Board of Elections a month before I see them, log it, and I know it's done.
So important. Of course, we've got 70 days now until the election. Richard Bell, for your book is so important. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Laura. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Again, it's called Voting, the Ultimate Act of Resistance, brought to you by election law expert and attorney Richard C. Bell, who served on the DNC National Lawyers Council, the Minority Voting Rights Committee, and was an electoral poll monitor for the Obama campaign in Philadelphia in 2012, and an electoral poll monitor for the Clinton campaign in Broward County, Florida, during the 2016 election. He's also argued and won an appeal of a court order protecting voters' rights in New Jersey on Election Day in 2006. We'll be right back.